Say, finally got a chance to get back out on the trail. Decided to do an end-of-year run with the Nova Jeepers up to Union Springs. It's a great trail, easy trail during the summer, a little bit more challenging in the winter. We'd had some ice and snow the week prior. We expected the trail to be pretty bad, but it wasn't too bad. The temperatures were pretty warm, which can make the ice pretty glassy, but there was only one stretch of really bad ice. We had a lot of downed trees, which was kind of interesting. We had a very large one across the trail. Everybody teamed together to take that out. You'll see that clip down in the video. And just a great crew in general. We had the lead, JK, with 1 tons and 40s. We had the tail coming up with a diesel Gladiator on 37s. We had myself. We had 2 two-doors, a black and a yellow, and another 4-door yellow Jeep with open diffs, limited slip in the back. Pretty impressive group all in all different vehicles, and everybody did a great job of handling any obstacles that came up, and a lot of great teamwork out there. So had a really good time. Enjoy the video. As you can see, we started off with a very clean, easy to navigate road, just a little bit of mud, no ice. As you see there's a little patch. That was a sign of things to come on this side of the mountain. On the northern side of these trails, you've got a lot of melt that comes off the side of the mountains and freezes. You don't really get a lot of melt throughout the season just because of it being on the north side. A very scenic trip to do in the fall. With all the leaves down, you get a much better view. I've done this trail during the summer months and the winter months, and I love the change of scenery during the seasons. So I sped this part up. It is very scenic, but it was a kind of a long stretch. As you'll see, there's a couple of icy patches here starting to form. As we get further in and higher up, that increases. But this is a pretty level, easy stretch to cruise through. So at this stage, we started to see a few more of the icy patches on the trail. My front camera gave out on me, so I didn't get any front video after this. But I tried to get enough of the video out of the window, but you can see the ice on the trail here. So at this point, we hit the first ice that we'd really seen that we had to be kind of careful with. So this was a long stretch of very wet, very slick ice. Off to the right-hand side, it is soft edge, and it's going downhill slope. As you can see, the lead went ahead and ran this stretch to make sure he understood the lines so that he could spot us up, and he's taken the left where there's debris sticking up out of the ice, and it gives him some pretty good traction. That continued up about halfway. He was able to continue up all the way on that particular side. The rest of us, as we got up, we slid over to the right-hand side where the traction was found again, and it was a little less soft than here at the beginning, and we were able to continue up on the right hand side for the rest of it. But this was a really interesting stretch. Some of the other group members took a few video clips, and I put them in here because it shows you some different perspectives. So here's the same run, but from a different angle. See how he's keeping his tires off to that uphill side where the leaves are sticking through to give himself some traction. His Jeep's sitting on 1 tons and 40s, and he's got beadlock tires. He's got that aired down to, I think, about 10 pounds. So it doesn't look all that slick here, but the angle is much steeper than what it appears, and this ice was super wet. I had a hard time just getting out of my vehicle and standing without falling on the position, even in the center there where his passenger side tires are, was super slick. The camera just doesn't do it justice. There's a couple of pictures that I've incorporated into the video later on that actually show some of the slick ice with the glare of the water off of it. This was my run-up that somebody captured. As you can see, I'm following his guidance. I'm staying on the uphill side to make sure I get traction. As you can see, now I've lost traction and I've slid down to the right-hand side. The lead's trying to position me so that my tires are off on the right-hand side where there's more traction. And now I've got my tires off to the side where I've got some traction. And we got the next guy coming up. You can see the wet ice in this shot. Woo! See him slide. That was a fun run when you slide toward that downhill slope. I know it doesn't look super downhill, but trust me, the camera doesn't do it justice. And we got one trying to come down. We actually had a couple of hunters at the top of this stretch that were waiting on us to get up so that they could come on down. So after we got this Jeep up, we will let them pass.
I'm going to come up where you are.
This is a different perspective of that same climb. Watch him as he gets to that center point where he loses traction off on the driver's side and slides down to the passenger side. Still maintaining good traction on the driver's side. This was the only Jeep we had in the group that didn't have a winch. As he gets to this spot, he starts to lose traction on that passenger side, or on the driver's side rather, and now he slid. That tells you how slick it is. Still sliding, trying to find that traction on the passenger side. And now he's found that traction off on the passenger side. You just got to hug those trees on that side and not lose a mirror. Yeah, because you keep hugging that side, and then all of a sudden you hit that ice. And
that side, though, you get a lot of traction.
You do, yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, as long as you don't mind the branches.
You get to that point where you guys slid.
Yep.
And then it's all about just a steady throttle.
So this Jeep is open diffs. He's got a limited slip in the rear, and that's it. He was the only Jeep that didn't have lockers on the trip. And he's approaching that spot where everybody slid.
Yep.
Exactly. You
resets you where you need to go.
let the Jeep reposition itself, yeah. I think you're right. And once he slid, he was able to regain traction on that downhill side and made sure that he got his tires placed correctly, and then he just drove right up. It was pretty impressive to watch a vehicle without lockers that could handle the ice. You would expect it not to work so well, but the guy did a great job of driving. Yeah, it is. With no lockers? Perfect.
I ain't gonna say anything about your open anymore.
So this Jeep joined us a little bit late and was not able to air down completely. They did not have an onboard air compressor, so they were a little bit nervous if they didn't meet up with us how they were going to air back up. But they aired down to about 20 psi, and that's not helping them with traction here. You see their front end did not slide completely around like everybody else, so their front didn't engage with the traction off to the downhill side.
Keep coming.
We tried again and again to reposition them, and all efforts failed. Yeah. There it is. Oh, damn.
All right.
Nope.
All right.
Nope. That might be.
I didn't get all of the effort on film, unfortunately, but we actually went down and we put sand underneath the tires. We deflated their tires down to about 10 psi, and we still had a hard time. We wound up having to rig a winch to one of the trees on the downhill slope side to pull that front end back around. And once they were able to get those tires back on the traction, then they had no problem getting the rest of the way up. And they didn't have any more problems throughout the day. I assume a lot of this was because of the air pressure in the tires. Once we were able to get them up the hill, we continued on our way. This is an area on the trail that they've got some minor obstacles. It's a lot of fun, summer or winter. We had a lot of downed trees, and you see the guy walking. He was picking up a lot of the downed trees, getting them out of the way. But look at that scenery. Normally you can't see a lot of that because of the leaves on the trees. Beautiful view. We came across a lot of these spots where there were puddles of water that had heavily frozen. We had temps in the single digits a couple of about 4 or 5 days prior to this, and some of this was the puddles were very deep, and they had like 6 inches of water on the top, and you could see water bubbling up through the ice, but the ice was so hard underneath that water that these heavy Jeeps were able to drive across them without breaking through the ice. Some of them were a little less on the hard side. We broke through and churned up some mud. It was kind of a mixed bag. This is one of the more fun obstacles on Union Springs Trail. It's a steep uphill climb, and as you get to the top, it's a very narrow spot between a tree, which is notorious for tearing up your mirror. You can see the bark peeled off of it. On the passenger side, at the driver's side, you've got that large rock right there, and you've got to get up, and then the edge is very close. Fortunately, this was not ice covered. It would have been pretty interesting and would have required some winching, but as it was, very easy climb for everybody. And at this point, you're going to start seeing more and more of these puddles. You notice the amount of water that's up on top of that ice, but the ice was so tough that we didn't break through. Those become more and more frequent as we drive through this stretch. So in this one, the ice is softer and he's able to break through. Sorry for the wild camera angle. See all that soft mud. Gotta be careful when you're driving through ice like that. If you sink too deep, some of that ice can do some damage to the underside of your vehicle. As you see, this stretch here is a little uphill with some ice on the trail. Wasn't a problem getting traction, but if we'd have come out a week before, it would have been a winch effort. This was one of the larger puddles, and there was quite a bit of water on top of the ice. As you see just off to the side of my tire there, you'll see water bubbling up through a hole right there. That's pretty wild. And once again, this one was a little bit softer. We were breaking through. Up until this point, we'd seen quite a few downed trees, but they were all pretty small in size. One or two of us was able to grab a hold of each one of them and pull them off the trail. But this one was a little different. So this tree was a large trunk. My chainsaw's got a bar, 16-inch bar on it, and I would say the trunk of this tree had an additional 6 inches of diameter on it. So it was probably up there around the 22-inch mark. And some of the top branches were probably 6 to 8 inches in diameter, so it took quite a bit of effort. The group got together, we sat down, we discussed the situation, we developed a plan, who was going to do what, and everybody was a great team member, and it was well executed. We had a group come from the top of the trail with a small gas chainsaw. They helped take some of the small limbs down on the other side. We topped out the tree into small movable pieces, or at least as small as we could, and a group of guys dragged those limbs off to the side. So at this point we determined that some of the pieces were a little bit large to manipulate manually, so we pulled the lead Jeep up and we used his winch with some snatch blocks to position the line so we could drag the larger pieces off to the side of the trail. It was a great group effort here.
Yes, get out of the way. All right. Okay.
Anytime you get into one of these situations, it's important with a large group to make sure that everybody understands what they're doing, and you don't wind up in a dangerous situation where somebody's running into the guy with the chainsaw, or you're cutting a limb with the chainsaw and dropping it on top of somebody's hand or foot. As you can see here, the winch team is doing a great job of making sure that everybody's aware of what's going on, making sure that nobody gets hurt with the winch in just case the line snaps, or getting their fingers in between a tree and the winch line. We didn't want to have to haul anybody down the mountain injured. My electric chainsaw came in pretty handy on this trip. It's been a pretty good tool to have on the trail as well as in camp. I've used it quite a bit. If you haven't seen my video on the electric chainsaw, go and check it out on my channel. But it was definitely worth its weight in gold on this particular trip. As you can hear in the background, there's a gas chainsaw. Somebody came down from the top of the hill and was helping us clear some of the small limbs. It was a small gas chainsaw, but it did a good job with the smaller limbs, and we appreciated the help. At this point, we decided to tackle the main chunk of the trunk. We took off about 6 feet, and as I said, it's probably about 22 inches in diameter. We decided to not completely cut through it, but we left about 3 inches of the trunk intact. And then we hooked the winch to the end of it, and then we used the winch to break that piece off and tug it off to the side. So here we've cut through most of the large piece of the trunk, and we've got the winch attached to it. We're going to go ahead and break that off and drag it off to the side. This will effectively leave the path clear so vehicles can now get by. This was a fantastic group effort and really was a lot of fun. I had a blast. kind of funny. I've used my winch on a lot of trees, but I've yet to use it for a vehicle recovery. But hey, you know what? If you've got a winch and you run into these types of situations, it's awful nice to have. Here's a couple of pictures that the group took. Pretty large tree. Once we got past the tree, we went up to the meadow and we had lunch. We had some tacos and chicken wings and brownies and cornbread. It was a fantastic spot to stop. And then we get back on the trail. We ran into these hunting dogs. They were off by themselves. They all have collars on. Obviously, somebody's tracking them. But they were interested in us and thought we were going to give them a ride down. They followed us all the way down to the bottom of the mountain. And we did actually find their owners. They loaded them up in the truck. Evidently, they were looking for a bear, and they were going to put the dogs on its scent. But they did make it safely to their owners. But they followed us for quite some time. They seemed to want a ride really bad. So once you reach Flagpole Knob at the top of Union Springs Trail, you have an option to bail out to the main road or go down Dunkel Hollow. And this is the Dunkel Hollow Trail leading out to Switzer Lake. So this trail we expected to be fairly bad, and it looks worse than it is. The ice and snow were soft, and we didn't really have too much of a traction issue on this side of the mountain. It just looks a lot worse than it really is.
Alright, I'm back to getting traction again.
We hit a couple of these spots, but as your heavy Jeep rolls on top of this mostly melted ice and snow, it crushes through it pretty well. You just have to take it nice and slow. This particular spot was a little bit slick. As you can tell, the ice is pretty wet, but it really did not create too much of a traction issue. Actually, the worst obstacle here was the dogs making sure that they were out of your path, although they seem pretty good at staying out of the way.
Trail's clear around this 180-degree downhill turn, and then it starts turning into ice again.
So at this point, you're getting close to the bottom. It flattens out and just becomes pretty much a dirt road after this. This stretch looked like it was a little bit worse than it was, but it was no challenge whatsoever. And this pretty much was the end of the trail. So I've got some pictures here that some of the group took that I thought were nice. Here it shows the very wet ice, shows the little river crossing. All in all, a fantastic trip. So hey, if you're in the Northern Virginia area, take a look at the Nova Jeepers Club. It's a great club. This was a members-only ride, but they do rides that non-members can join at times too. It's a great bunch of people, and like-minded folks. Have a good time. Really appreciate you watching the video. Like and subscribe, and do all that good YouTube stuff. Thanks much.